I am a grain of sand, small, unseen, and often swept aside by the calloused heels of those who walk this road from the hills of Judea to the heart of Jerusalem. I've nestled into the folds of countless feet soldiers, shepherds, mothers, and prophets each, carrying burdens I will never fully grasp. Yet somehow, I hold fragments of their story. Today, like most days, I lie near the bend where the path curves around a withered fig tree, the sun casting long shadows that soften the sharpness of the stones. Beneath me, roots run deep. Above me, feet shuffle past. No one knows I'm here, but I know them. I know how pain folds into the gait of a man who has lost his land. I know how prayer lingers in the tread of a woman walking alone. I know the ache of longing carried in each hesitant step. For I have felt it all. I am not stone, unmoved and cold. I am dust-soft, giving, and shaped by the ones who tread upon me. And in their shaping, I remember. I am a grain of sand, and still I remember. I remember when the Roman legions first marched down this road, their boots heavy with arrogance, their banners like wounds fluttering in the air. I remember the silence that followed, the kind of silence that doesn't comfort, but suffocates. Even the children knew better than to laugh. Women carried water with eyes cast down. Men gripped their tools not with purpose but with resentment they could never voice. That was decades ago. Since then, the dust has settled, but the tension has not. It presses into every footprint like a second weight. The stones groan in silence, the olive trees whisper it in the wind, and we grains of sand, we carry it in our silence. And yet, something in me remembers the stories passed down in the hush of midnight fires. Stories of Moses parting waters, of David and his harp, of prophets who dared to speak when all others trembled. I do not know if stones can believe, but I know that I ache to believe. Every time a weary heel presses me deeper into the path, I wonder if it might be the heel of the One, the Anointed, the Liberator, the seed of Jesse, the promise whispered to Abraham under the stars. Can a grain of sand know such things? Perhaps not. But if the rocks can cry out, as the prophet said, then surely I may yearn. And in my yearning, I wait. Today, a woman passed by, her sandals frayed, her face veiled against the sun. Her shadow lingered over me longer than most. She walked slowly, not because she was tired, but because she was listening to the earth, perhaps, or to something within. She hummed a lullaby. I recognized the tune. It was one of those ancient ones, the kind grandmothers sing not just to soothe, but to remind the soul of its roots. As she walked, her eyes scanned the sky, not with fear, with longing. I pressed into her heel, gently, as if to say, I am here too, I remember. And for a moment I felt part of her pilgrimage, invisible but not insignificant. Evening approaches now. The wind rises and carries with it the smell of fig leaves and iron. The road quiets, and I remain, not as a stone in the shoe, not as a nuisance to be brushed away, but as a witness, a tiny fragment of the land that remembers everything. My name is unspoken, my presence is unnoticed, but I lie beneath the feet of a people who wait, and that makes my silence sacred. I am a grain of sand, and I wait too. Night settles with its familiar chill, and the stars begin their patient vigil above. I have seen countless nights like this, and yet each one carries a different weight. Tonight, the air trembles not with cold but with waiting. Somewhere beyond the hills, a wolf howls, a sound both ancient and immediate. It echoes through the olive groves, stirs the barley fields, and touches even me, buried half in shadow near the roots of the fig tree. The howl speaks of hunger, but also of presence, a cry in the darkness that somehow assures us we are not alone. I listen, as I always do, not just with what I am, but with what I hope to be, receptive, attentive, open. The elders once said that when the time is right, the earth itself will sigh. I have listened for that sigh for as long as I can remember. I have mistaken footsteps for it. I have mistaken thunder. I have mistaken the silence after prayer. But the sigh has not come. Not yet. Still, I remain, not because I must, but because I believe that even a grain of sand can hope. My world is made of footsteps and pauses, of prayers whispered through cracked lips, of sandals held together by twine, of shadows that deepen before dawn. And in this small, unnoticed place, I choose to wait. This morning, a child knelt beside the path. His hand sifted through the dust, drawing shapes only he understood. His mother called to him, worried perhaps that he might disturb something sacred, but he only laughed and whispered, "I'm drawing the face of the king." His fingers passed over me like a blessing, and for a brief moment, I was part of that imagined face. What does a king look like to a child? Kind, I think, with eyes that do not flinch at pain, with hands that lift the lowly. I held my breath or would have, if sand could breathe in that stillness. I saw more clearly than I ever had. Not his face, but his hope. The shape of a dream pressed into the dirt. I cannot speak, but if I could, I would ask the heavens why it takes so long. Why freedom delays while chains rust into the bones of the weary. Why the cries of the innocent rise year after year, and still no answer. Why the promises written in scrolls fade, while the people bend lower and lower under the weight of hope deferred. But maybe the waiting is part of the promise. Maybe the longing carves out space for something greater than deliveranceia, Redeemer who does not merely free bodies, but resurrects hearts. I am a grain of sand, not mighty, not wise, but I see, I feel, I remember, and I wait. Beneath the souls of the hopeful and the broken alike, I lie still, listening, watching, praying in my own waywardness, patient, open, and one day, when that sigh of the earth finally comes, I will be here, pressing gently into the heel of the one who walks not to conquer, but to redeem. And I will know it, not by the sound of his step or the weight of his foot, but by the peace that flows through me when he passes. I have heard the rhythm of suffering in the souls of the oppressed. Each footfall carries a secret, a silence, a sigh. And here, where I lie along the main road leading into the town, the weight of oppression is never far. Today, I felt it again sharp, relentless, like the press of a thorn not on flesh but on memory. Soldiers passed earlier in the morning, their sandals stiff, their voices loud, laughing at nothing, as if to fill the hollow space fear once occupied. The children scattered, women paused their steps to look away, hiding their expressions in the folds of their cloaks. Men turned inward, pretending not to see. I could feel the tension ripple through the dust like heat rising from the ground. No one spoke, but the silence screamed. I remember one boy in particular, no older than 10, who tried to make himself invisible by pressing against a crumbling wall. His breath hitched as a centurion turned his gaze toward him, then passed without comment. That boy's foot brushed me, and I clung to his heel not in fear, but in quiet solidarity. I knew the fear in his body, the way his heartbeat must have pounded like a drum of warning. And I knew, too, the strange calm that followed when the danger moved on, leaving only trembling behind. That kind of fear stays in the bones long after the soldiers are gone. It lingers, curling itself into the corners of your soul. Later, after the dust had settled and the shadows had lengthened, the road grew still again. I listened as an old man sat by the fig tree not far from where I lay. He was muttering to himself, not madness, but memory. He spoke names from long ago: Gideon, Deborah, Samuel. Names carried like seeds across centuries, dropped into stories told under stars. His voice cracked as he recited from memory the words of the prophet. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light, and he wept not for a time that had passed, but for a time not yet come. There is something sacred in the weeping of the aged. It is not only sorrow, it is an offering. His tears did not fall upon my grain, but I felt them nonetheless, felt them in the silence that followed, the kind of silence that listens. And in that quiet, I wondered if perhaps we all are being listened to, even those of us who cannot speak. The land, they say, cries out. The stones remember, why not the sand? A woman passed soon after, balancing a clay jar atop her head, her back straighter than her years suggested. She walked as if trained by dignity, not by defiance. As she approached the fig tree, she paused, adjusted the jar, and whispered a single word: Emmanuel. Then she moved on, her feet light but purposeful. The word hung in the air long after her footsteps faded. Emmanuel, God with us. I do not know who taught her that name. Perhaps it was passed down from her mother, or a dream, or a desperate longing spoken under moonlight. The name stirred something in me, a resonance that went deeper than sound. I have heard many names shouted on this road, names of rulers, of merchants, of missing sons, but this one was different. It was not shouted. It was not spoken in anger or longing. It was simply offered, as one might offer bread to the hungry or light to the lost. And in that offering, it became a prayer. The sun dipped lower, drawing the sky into amber and rose. Shadows stretched like fingers across the road, and with them came a hush. It was not silence, not truly more like the breath the world takes before it speaks. And in that breath, I remembered again why I choose to remain. I am a witness not to greatness in the way men measure it, but to the quiet moments when hope refuses to die. A hand brushing a child's hair, a song hummed in mourning, a name whispered in faith. I cannot move of my own will, but I have been moved by many. I have journeyed far on the feet of pilgrims and soldiers alike, but no journey has shaped me as much as staying still has. Here, in this small patch of road where eyes do not linger, I have come to know the shape of yearning. It is not always grand. Sometimes it is simply a pause, a breath, a tear held back. A child came by at dusk, barefoot and dusty, his arms cradling a broken toy carved from olive wood. He sat near the tree and began speaking to the sky, not shouting, not even asking, just speaking. "If you can hear me," he said, "tell my father I'm trying to be brave." The words were not for anyone around him. They were not meant to be heard by human ears. But I heard, and I felt them sink into the earth like seeds into furrows, waiting. The stars returned, blinking one by one into the fabric of night. I watched their light fall across the road, gentle and slow. They did not blaze, did not demand. They simply were, present, steady, like faith that has learned to endure without proof. And I thought, maybe this too is part of the story. Not the triumphs or the signs, but the ordinary faithfulness of those who wait, and wait, and wait some more. I am a grain of sand. I lie on the path between what has been and what is promised. Beneath me, the earth sighs in dreams. Above me, feet carry burdens and hopes. Around me, shadows lengthen and vanish, only to return again. I remain not because I must, but because hope, once kindled, becomes a fire that refuses to die. I wait, and I believe. The night deepens now, and the cold begins to settle. A wind stirs the dust around me, swirling in small, aimless eddies that mimic the wandering of hearts left unanswered. From a distant house, the sound of a flute rises soft, tentative, as if the player fears to be heard. The melody is simple, a lament woven into tune, but also strangely comforting. I imagine it reaching the ears of those who have forgotten how to hope, reminding them not through argument or promise, but through presence. Presence that says, "You are not alone." Presence that stays. And still I wait, for something I cannot name but recognize. A footstep that does not bring oppression but peace. A voice that speaks not with power but with truth. A presence that does not demand but invites. If such a one walks this road, I will feel him, I will know him. And when he passes, I will press myself into his heel with all that I am, not to cling, but to witness, to remember, to tell, in the language only dust understands, that he was here. I have seen generations pass, their faces shifting with time, their prayers reshaped by suffering. Yet one thing remains constant, the hunger. Not of the stomach, though that too is real. This is a deeper hunger, etched into the gait of every man who drags his feet home from the fields, into the sigh of every mother who presses her sleeping child to her chest, and wonders how long until freedom come. I have heard it in the grinding of teeth during sleepless nights, and in the breath held too long during heated arguments, whispered behind closed doors. It is a hunger for dignity, for a name that cannot be erased by decree or blade, for a future unchained. I remember the morning a boy no older than 12 ran past me barefoot, his voice breaking with laughter, a rare sound. He held a slingshot in one hand and a fig in the other, and for a moment the road felt lighter beneath his joy, but only for a moment. Behind him came his father, calling not in anger but in fear. "Stay close," he cried. "Not today. That boy's foot barely touched me, but in that fleeting contact, I felt the heat of his blood, the spark of life unburdened by history. I envied him, not for his youth, but for the way he could still laugh without hesitation. Such laughter is rare here. Rarer still is faith that has not been burned by waiting, and yet it persists. I have heard old women speak of the Messiah with the same certainty they once spoke of the harvest. They say he will come. They say he must come. They say the signs are everywhere. This morning, a group of children gathered near the tree. One of them, a girl with wild hair and steady eyes, began to tell a story. "He will come riding a donkey," she said. "He won't carry a sword. He will carry peace." The others laughed, not cruelly, just uncertainly. But she continued, "He will speak and even the wind will listen. He will touch the sick and they will rise. He will cry with us, not above us." I listened with a reverence I did not expect. The girl's words rang not with fantasy, but with faith born of fire. An old man passing by paused when he heard her. He leaned on his staff, watched for a moment, then spoke softly. "Child, where did you hear this?" She shrugged. "My mother says it when she's tired." He smiled, not amused, not dismissive, but as one who recognizes truth spoken in innocence. Then he walked on, and the children, moved by something they could not name, fell silent. The fig leaves rustled overhead, and I wondered if the tree, too, was listening. By midday, the road baked beneath the sun. I warmed with it, my grains expanding slightly, holding the heat like memory. A merchant trudged past, his cart groaning beneath the weight of jars and spices. He muttered curses at a wheel that wobbled, at a fly that would not leave his face, at the tax he would owe once he reached the gate. But then, as he passed the fig tree, he stopped. For a moment, he stared at its trunk, weathered and gnarled, and sighed. "Isaiah said a shoot will spring from the stump of Jesse," he whispered. The words seemed to escape him, uninvited but not unwelcome. He shook his head, as if ashamed of his own hope, and moved on. Yet I held his words, pressed them into my being, a shoot from the stump, life from what is deemed dead. I have seen such things. We all have. The way weeds bloom through stone, the way light finds its way through cracked roofs, the way people rise again and again, not because they are strong, but because they refuse to forget the promise. As the heat waned, a young man with bandaged hands sat beneath the tree and opened a scroll. His fingers trembled slightly as he read aloud, not to anyone in particular, just to the dust and air. "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me," he read, "because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor." His voice caught on the word poor. He stopped, folded the scroll, closed his eyes, and sat there in stillness. I do not know what broke in him at that moment, grief, or hope, or both, but I felt it ripple outward like a wave. He stayed until the stars returned, unmoving. When he finally stood, he left behind no footprints. The wind had already erased them, but I remembered. I remember everything, and I believe the earth does too. We hold stories, even if we cannot retell them. We cradle hope, even if we do not understand it. We wait for footsteps that speak not of power, but of healing, and when they come, we will know. I am a grain of sand. The world walks over me. The weary press their weight into me. The forgotten bleed upon me. And yet I remain, not crushed, but chosen. Chosen to wait, chosen to listen, chosen to believe. Somewhere in this dust is the breath of prophecy. Somewhere in these footsteps is the whisper of redemption. And somewhere, not far, he is coming. I know it, not because I heard it, not because I saw it, but because I was made to know, and that is enough. The breeze returns now, gentle and uncertain, like a question forming in the mouth of someone afraid to ask. It carries the smell of bread baking somewhere far, of sweat and cedar, of olive oil spilled on stone. These are ordinary things, and yet tonight they feel holy. Perhaps holiness was never meant to shine, but to stay with us, among us, in dust and ache. I do not know what will happen tomorrow. I do not know whose feet will find me, whose story I will brush against. But I know this hunger, this ache, this longing like a pulse beneath silence. It aches like a song with no ending, like a promise unfulfilled, like the sound of your own name spoken once and never again. And still, it sings. And still, we wait. And still, the road stretches forward, a ribbon of silence and breath and unseen glory. And Ismail, unnoticed, unworthy remain, because I must, because something holy is drawing near. I do not remember the moment I came to rest at the bend of this road, only that I have been here long enough to forget what it means to be elsewhere. I have seen sandals wear thin, wheels splinter under weight, and the stone walls on either side of the path crumble like bread left too long in the sun. Yet I remain, unchanged in shape, but not untouched, for I have absorbed countless stories, pressed into me not by ink or tongue but by footsteps and time. And today, a new story was written not with words or scroll, but with blood. It was early, before the light had fully claimed the sky, when a man stumbled into view. He was not old, but he walked as though every bone in his body had forgotten youth. His tunic was torn, his cheek bruised, and one eye swollen shut. He leaned heavily on a branch stripped of bark, not as a staff of journey, but as a crutch for survival. He did not speak, he did not cry out, but he bled, and the blood fell in drops that found me. I had never felt blood before, not like this. There is a kind of heat to it, different from sun or fire. It pulsed, alive, as if the pain itself was breathing. Each drop carried weight, not just of injury, but of injustice. I could not understand his wounds, but I felt them. I felt the weariness, the shame, the strange dignity of one who continues walking long after strength has left. He did not stop at the tree, did not rest. He simply passed through, and with him came silence, a note of peace, but of reverence. Even the birds seemed to hold their songs. Hours later, others came, one with oil and linen, another with a donkey that bore no burden. They followed the faint trail he left behind, not the obvious one of feet, but the invisible line drawn by suffering. The man with the linen knelt near the tree, reached into the earth, and touched where the blood had fallen. He did not speak, but his breath caught. Then he looked up to the sky and said, "How long, O Lord?" The words were not loud, but they echoed, even within me. How long? A question older than memory. The prophets asked it, the mothers asked it. Even the stars, I think, blink it into the night. How long must the righteous suffer while the cruel prosper? How long will the promise wait on the horizon, always just beyond reach? How long will hope be a thing whispered, never shouted? The man stood slowly, took one last look at the ground, then turned and walked away. The other followed, leading the empty donkey. They did not speak again. Their silence was heavy, not empty, but full of all they did not say. The road returned to stillness. I remained, and so did the blood, darkening as it dried, sinking slightly into the dust. I absorbed what I could, not to erase, but to remember. That drop, that moment, that minute is now part of me, and I, in turn, am part of his story. I wonder who he was. A zealot? A thief? A prophet misunderstood? Or simply a man caught in the cruel machinery of a world that fears the gentle and reveres the powerful? I do not know. But I remember the way he walked, not with pride, but with a kind of grace that no beating could take. In the afternoon, a woman passed by. She wore a shawl pulled tightly around her shoulders, though the heat did not demand it. Her eyes moved constantly, not out of fear, but of searching. She saw the stain near the tree, paused, and bent down. She touched the ground where the blood had dried. Her hand trembled. Then she whispered, "Was it him?" I did not know whom she meant. Perhaps a brother, a son, a friend, or someone more. She closed her eyes, pressed her forehead to the earth, and said, "Come soon, Messiah." She stayed for a long time, her body still, her breath steady. The fig leaves swayed above her, casting shifting patterns across her back. When she finally rose, she took nothing with her, not even certainty. But she left something behind, something unseen, a sense that what she hoped for was not in vain, that the ache in her chest had found a place to rest, that even in the absence of answers, presence remains. As night crept in, the stain of blood blurred into the color of shadow. It no longer stood out, but it did not disappear. I do not know what morning will bring, but I know this: the man who bled here, the woman who wept here, The silence that followed, none of it is forgotten. Not by me, not by the earth, perhaps not even by heaven. I am a grain of sand. I do not speak, I do not move, but I remember, and I believe that memory is sacred. That one day, the one who knows every footfall will return, and where blood once fell, healing will rise. And so I wait, not as one cast aside, but as one chosen to bear witness. I wait not for proof, but for presence, not for answers, but for arrival. And when he comes, I will know not by the sound of his voice or the weight of his step, but by the way the silence bends to make way for peace. The stars emerge, soft and slow, as if reluctant to witness what the day has seen. They offer no judgment, only their quiet glow, steady as breath. I lie beneath them, small and silent, carrying the memory of a wound not mine, and yet somehow shared. And in this memory, I find a strange hope, not in the absence of pain, but in the nearness of grace. For what else could compel a wounded man to walk, a woman to wait, and a grain of sand to believe? I have often wondered if those who walk upon me know they are not alone, if the soles of their feet sense the stories beneath them, if the dust that clings to their ankles whispers of the ones who walked before. Today, I touched a tear. It did not fall from heaven, nor from any visible wound. It fell silently, from a woman's cheek, unnoticed by the world but not by me. I was resting near the threshold of a narrow house, the kind built of stone and silence, when she emerged. Her face was veiled, but her posture carried sorrow like a vessel carries water carefully, deliberately, with no effort to conceal its weight. She stepped into the street, carrying nothing but the echo of grief. I felt her tear before I saw it. It landed beside me, warm despite the morning chill, and in its weight was a prayer too old for language. She did not speak, but her body did. Each step was a conversation with God, filled with questions left unanswered for generations. Where are you? Why do you wait? What have we done that you remain so distant? Her feet moved slowly, as if each pace required permission from her soul. I clung to her heel as she passed, a witness to her mourning. I do not know what loss she bore, child, spouse, or dream, but I know how sorrow leaves a mark deeper than any blade. She stopped once, near the fig tree, and looked up. Her hands trembled, then fell to her sides, open, not in surrender, but in release. She let her grief fall where her tears already had, and then she whispered, "He knows." Just that, 2 words, but in them lived all the trust she had left. Later, a man with a limp came by. He used a carved staff and wore a tunic frayed at the hem. His pace was uneven, but not uncertain. He hummed a melody low, steady, like something his mother once sang when the nights were too long and the food too little. As he neared the tree, he paused and touched its bark. "You remember," he said, as if the tree itself held memory. "Perhaps it does. I know I do." He sat beside the tree for a while, rubbing his knee and staring into the middle distance where sky meets dust. He spoke again, not to anyone seen, but to the silence. She said he would come, that he would heal, that the lame would leap. He laughed once, short and rough. "I haven't leapt in years." Then he grew quiet, and the quiet settled thick around us. I wanted to say something, to affirm his hope, to tell him that the longing itself was sacred, but I am only sand. I cannot speak, I can only remain. And so I remained, close to his foot, sharing in his ache. Children passed later, chasing one another with sticks and laughter. Their joy was real, though it danced too close to sorrow, like flame near oil. One tripped and scraped his knee. He cried out not in great pain, but in surprise. His sister ran back and held his face in her hands. "Don't worry," she said. "He will fix it." Her voice was confident, like a declaration. The boy sniffled, nodded, and stood. I watched them run again, and I wondered, who taught her to believe that? And was she right? As twilight came, an old priest walked the road, his robes brushing the dust in long, practiced arcs. He muttered psalms with cracked lips, eyes cast down. He did not see me, of course. No one does. But he felt me, for he stumbled once and cursed softly, not at me, but perhaps at age, at memory, or at the distance between promise and fulfillment. He paused, sighed, and then spoke to the wind. He said he would come, soon, always soon. Then he walked on, slower now. That word soon, it haunts this place. It lingers in the cries of newborns, in the prayers of elders, in the silence after tragedy. Soon, they say. He will come soon. And I wonder, what does soon mean to eternity? To a God not bound by sunrises or sandals? Perhaps it means when hearts are ready, or when enough tears have fallen, or when the cry of one woman reaches his ear louder than 1,000 rituals. Night returned, stretching its dark across the sky like a canopy. A dog barked in the distance. A door creaked. Somewhere, someone wept again. And I, buried halfway beneath the weight of this road, held it all: the laughter, the limping, the psalms, the tears. I am a grain of sand. I have no name. I leave no trace, but I am part of the road he will one day walk. And when he comes, I will press into his heel with everything I am, not to mark him, but to remember that I too bore witness. And if he never comes, if this waiting stretches past all seasons and stories, then let me still be found here, faithful, silent, listening for the whisper of hope in the footfalls of the broken. The moon climbs higher now, silvering the stones and dust. I reflect its light faintly, a soft echo of something greater, and in that pale glow, I imagine the day he comes, not with thunder or banners, but with gentleness that bends to bind wounds and eyes that see even me. I will not shout, I will not rise, I will do what I have always done, remain, and in my stillness I will sing without sound. You are here, you are here. They say the Messiah will come from the east, and each morning I tilt slightly toward the sunrise, hoping to feel the first hint of his footfall. But days pass, and still only the ordinary. Hooves of tired donkeys, cries of merchants arguing over figs, the laughter of boys who throw stones just to hear them bounce. Today began like that common, dust-laden, slow, but something changed by mid-morning. A strange hush, the kind that doesn't silence but listens. Even the birds quieted. A breeze carried the scent of myrrh and oil, not strong, just present enough to signal something sacred. And then I felt it, a step unlike any other, not heavy, not hasty, not seeking to dominate the road, but to belong to it. He came riding on a donkey, just as the girl once said. Not a warrior's steed, not a chariot with banners, just a donkey, slow and sure, ears twitching at the noise of the gathering crowd. And the people, they came with palms, with cloaks, with voices cracked from waiting. Hosanna, they cried. Some shouted with hope, others with desperation. Some simply followed, unsure why, only that something in their bones had stirred. I felt the press of their feet, the tremble of their awe, and then he passed over me. The donkey's hoof landed just beside where I lay, and his sandal brushed my edge. I felt no weight, only warmth, as if the very dust recognized him. And in that moment, I knew. It wasn't the donkey, it wasn't the cries, it was him, the one, the long-awaited, the deeply whispered, the face of every hope that ever fell silent in the dark. His eyes scanned the road, not with pride, but with sorrow softened by love. He looked as if he saw every hidden thing and chose still to walk toward it. His hand reached out once to bless a child. His fingers lingered on the edge of a blind man's shawl. He whispered something to a woman with empty hands and full eyes, and all the while, he moved with purpose that felt like peace in motion. Behind him came confusion. Some expected swords, others miracles. Many didn't know what to expect at all, but he walked forward, unmoved by their expectations, as if answering not to them but to a voice deeper than history. And I, a grain of sand, remembered every story, every prophecy, every drop of longing that had soaked into the road for centuries. It was all here, it was all now. As he passed, I tried to cling to his heel, not to hold him back, but to remember the shape of redemption. It was not glorious in the way kings are. It was not loud. It was not gold or flame. It was gentle, deliberate, and entirely unafraid of dust. And as the procession moved on, I remained behind, trembling with a stillness that could only be called worship. The people continued after him, some singing, some wondering. A man muttered to another, "Do you think it's really him?" The other shrugged. He doesn't look like a king. And yet they followed, not all, but enough to make the dust rise in little whirlwinds that danced like joy reborn. A boy ran back after dropping his palm branch. He picked it up and kissed it before chasing the crowd again. Such faith, I thought, does not ask permission. By late afternoon, the road was quiet again. Only the footprints remained, and the scent of oil in the air. I was still warm from his presence, not from the sun, but from something deeper. From grace that does not shout, but settles. From a holiness that stoops instead of stands tall. From love that chooses a donkey over a throne. Night fell slowly, as if reluctant to end this day. Stars blinked into place. The wind returned, but everything felt different. The fig tree swayed, its leaves whispering among themselves. And I listened. I listened to the memory still echoing in my grain. He came. He really came. I am a grain of sand. I have waited for generations. I have held tears, prayers, blood, silence. But today, I held him. Not for long, not in any grand way, but enough. Enough to say that he was here, that the dust knows his name, that hope has a footprint, and it fits the heel of a man who rides on peace and carries the weight of the world not in war, but in love. Even now, long after his procession has passed, I feel the road humming with remembrance. Not loud, not proud, but alive. Something in the air is different. The cries have stopped, but their echo lingers like perfume, and the silence knows it's not empty. It's expectant, as if the earth itself is holding its breath, as if the stones, the trees, even the very sand, are waiting for the next step, for the next whisper, for the beginning of everything. Somewhere in the city, people still argue, leaders still scheme, fear still clings to corners. But here on this road, where the dust was stirred by the feet of the long-awaited, there is only this: peace in waiting, presence in absence, and the sacred knowledge that he does not avoid the ordinary. He walks through it. He walks through us. And if tomorrow brings betrayal, pain, or cross, we will still carry the memory of today, of palm branches, of donkey steps, of the holy brushing past the hidden. And I, unnoticed and unworthy, will still whisper what I now know to be true. He was here. I felt the tension before I saw the soldiers. The road grew heavier, not with footsteps but with dread. Even the wind seemed to withdraw, curling itself behind stones and leaves as the sound of armor approached. They did not march in rhythm. There was no pride in their steps today, only duty, only fear masked as authority. They came first, Roman soldiers with flat eyes and restless hands. Behind them, the priests, their lips moving in whispers, their robes brushing against sandal-scuffed dust. And then he came, but not as before. No donkey, no singing. His hands were bound, his face shadowed by bruises, his silence heavier than the spears that followed. He walked between them as if he carried more than chains, as if the very sorrow of the world had been wrapped around his shoulders. And the people they watched, from windows, from behind carts. Some stood close, too close, and yet said nothing. Others turned their faces away, pretending to study stones, but their eyes followed. Mine too. I had waited for this. Not like this, I had hoped. But I recognized him still. He did not look down. He did not look away. His eyes, when they found mine, when his sandal brushed my grain, held no accusation, no anger, only knowing, only love laced with grief too deep for words. And in that moment, I understood what prophecy could not fully explain, that redemption does not come in glory first, but in brokenness. That the way to resurrection begins with surrender. They led him away. The soldiers barked orders. One shoved him when he stumbled. Another laughed, sharp sound, empty of joy. A woman ran forward, then stopped short, her hands pressed to her mouth. She did not cry out. She only watched. Her tears fell not to her cheeks but to the ground, near me. I felt them soak the dust. I held them. Another witness. Another piece of the story absorbed into silence. When the crowd had passed, when the last spear tip vanished into the narrowing path, the road exhaled. The leaves above rustled, as if sighing. A bird landed on the fig tree, sang one uncertain note, then flew away, and I remained. Hours passed. A man came slowly, limping slightly. He carried a bucket of water and a cloth. He knelt where the blood had pooled, not to wash it away, just to honor it. He touched the stain, then dipped the cloth into the water. "Lamb of God," he whispered, "who takes away the sins of the world." He said no more. He stayed a while, then left the cloth on the stone, wet and trembling. The sun dipped lower, and with it came a strange hush. Not silence, but sorrow made visible in shadow. The road was empty again, but it remembered. So did I. I am a grain of sand. I have known weariness. I have known waiting, but never this weight, never this ache that does not pass. I wonder, did he see me? Did he feel the dust beneath him? Did he know that even I bowed in stillness as he walked the way of sorrow? He carried more than wood and punishment. He carried history, carried hope, carried the names of those who do not yet believe they are loved. And two remain to tell it. Night deepens. The stars return. Hesitant, no one walks this road now. The torches have gone. The city has closed its doors. But I remember. I remember his face. I remember his silence. I remember that love walked this road, not in power, but in pain. And I, though small, though unseen, will remember when others forget, will hold what others let go, because this dust, this very dust, was chosen to carry him. And if tomorrow brings the cross, then let me remain near it. Let me hear the cries, the forgiveness, the final breath. Let me hold the blood again, not to erase, but to witness. And if Sunday brings silence again, I will still hope. I will still wait, because now I know what kind of king walks among us, and he is worth waiting for. A breeze moves through the stones now, as if brushing away the memory of shouts. But I will not let it. I hold every echo, every tremble of the ground, every moment he drew breath near me. And tomorrow, when the sun rises over the hill where they will raise the wood, I will still be here. I will still listen. I will still sing without voice, cry without tears, and wait without time. For the one who passed this way was not just a man. He was the Word, and the Word has touched the dust. I think of the fig tree nearby. It too has watched, its roots tangled with mine beneath the soil. Its leaves once shaded the girl who spoke of peace, the priest who murmured, "Soon," the woman who wept without sound. Today, it saw him. Today, its shadow fell across the Messiah. What will it dream tonight? What will it remember when the sky burns gold and the cries return? And if when he falls tomorrow, I will not recoil. I will open myself to the print of his suffering. For he is not the kind to avoid pain. He is the kind who enters it, who makes a home in brokenness. And somehow, even in death, I believe he will still be the light. I am only dust, but he made me. And today, he walked upon me. That is enough to make even the ground holy. That is enough to believe that even here, even now, salvation begins. The sky turned dark far too early. Not the dusk of ordinary endings, but the weight of something torn. Even the birds fled, their wings slicing through silence. I felt the tremble first not from footsteps, but from the hill. The earth beneath me clenched like a fist. I am not near the top of Golgotha, but I am close enough to feel it. The wood groaned, the voices cracked, the cries began. It is not like anything I have known. There are no trumpets, no declarations, only the sound of nails and the breath of those who cannot understand what is happening, only that something holy is breaking. The soldiers are shouting, but it's the silence between their words that speaks louder. The silence of a mother watching her son die. The silence of a disciple hiding in the crowd. The silence of the sun, refusing to shine. I feel it all, the weight, the grief, the shaking of the very soil. And then, his voice, not loud, not angry, but filled with the full ache of all the ages. "Father, forgive them," he says, and the words fall like seeds into the earth, into me. I carry them now. Forgive them, forgive us. Forgive the ones who walked past, who shouted, who hammered. Forgive the silence, forgive the fear. The cross creaks, the sky weeps without rain. A man nearby offers him sour wine on a reed. Another mocks. But he does not answer. He is too busy carrying us in silence. The fig tree shakes its branches though there is no wind. The temple veil, they say, will tear. I wonder what veils in our hearts must also tear, what walls must fall, for this love to finally enter. The earth moans beneath me. I do not shake often, but today I tremble. I tremble because the world is ending and beginning at the same time. The cross casts a long shadow, longer than time, longer than guilt, and still he breathes. Fewer now, each breath pulled from agony, but in each is a promise. Today you will be with me, he whispers it to the thief beside him, and I feel that hope sink into the hillside. He is not saving himself, he is saving us. When the final cry comes, it is not rage, it is release, it is finished. And with those words, the ground splits, stones crack, tombs groan open, and I, a grain of sand near the foot of the hill, absorb the sound of death dying. The sky grows darker still. The wind howls through olive branches. A soldier nearby falls to his knees. Surely, he says, this was the Son of God. He does not weep, but something in him bends, finally, like a branch too long resisting the storm. The crowd disperses slowly. Some run, others walk with heads lowered. The mother remains. She kneels, her face hidden in her hands. Another woman holds her. A young man, the beloved one, wraps a cloak around her shoulders. No one speaks. What words could rise in such a moment? I listen. I remember. I mark the soil with every tear that falls. Later, they take his body down, not with reverence at first, but with practicality. The Sabbath draws near. But then, as his body rests against the arms of the silent ones, reverence finds them. They carry him away, past me, toward the tomb. The stone will seal it. The guards will watch it. But I know, in the marrow of dust, that stones do not keep him. That death cannot bind him. The women stay behind a moment longer. They sit on rocks. They hold hands. They say nothing. One hums a lullaby. I think it was his mother. She rocks slightly, side to side, as if she still holds him, as if her arms refuse to forget the weight of God-made flesh. The sun sinks, the road empties, Sabbath comes. But nothing feels at rest. Even the fig tree stands alert, its branches taut, its roots humming. I feel them. I feel everything. I am a grain of sand. I held the blood of the Son of God. I carry his voice in my fibers. I am not worthy, but I was here, and that is enough. The stars return, not with celebration, but with bearing witness. The night is long, the world is aching, but something holy has begun. Buried, yes. Hidden, yes, but begun. Resurrection is a seed planted in suffering, and suffering is the soil that remembers. Tomorrow they will mourn. Tomorrow they will doubt, but I will still be here, quiet, unmoving, alive with memory, for he came this way. He fell on this earth. He bled on this road. And I remember, the night thickens, but beneath it, I feel a stirring, not wind, not feet, something deeper, a breath returning to a body, a heartbeat echoing in stone. I do not understand it. I only receive it. And if this road will one day feel his feet again, risen and radiant, I will press close. I will remember the weight of sorrow so that I may rejoice rightly in the dawn. For the silence now is not the end. It is the pause before glory. And I, unseen and low, will be the first to feel it. The morning arrived, but no one celebrated. It was the kind of dawn that forgets how to rise, where light crawls instead of bursts. The tomb had been sealed, the guards posted. I could feel their sandals shift restlessly through the night, pacing, questioning, rehearsing lies they might tell if something happened. Nothing happened, not yet, but something was coming. I felt it. The way you feel thunder before it speaks. Deep, low, certain, the earth held its breath. Even the roots did not stretch. Even the fig tree stood still. No bird sang, but underneath, something began. It wasn't loud. It wasn't sudden. It was like the deep cracking of ice just before the thaw. A shift, a breath, a return. I am a grain of sand, but I felt it before the stone moved. The pulse of life not re-entering, but rising, not restored, but remade. The tomb that had swallowed the light began to lose its hunger, and then it happened. The stone rolled, not pushed, not dragged, but moved with intention, with power that held no anger. The guards fell, some ran, some fainted, but I remained. I heard the sound of cloth folding gently. I heard silence stretch into praise. And I knew, He is not here, He is risen. I could not shout it. I could not run to tell anyone, but I glowed in my dust. I trembled in joy. The one who once passed by me bleeding now stood beyond death, and I believed, more deeply than ever, more fully than words can carry. Then the women came. They carried spices and sorrow. Their footsteps were slow, their hope a thread too thin to hold. They saw the stone moved. They saw the place empty. One dropped the jar in her hand, another fell to her knees. And then the angel spoke, not loud, but clear. "Why do you seek the living among the dead?" The women gasped. One cried, another laughed, a third simply whispered His name. The angel told them to go, tell the others. And they did. They ran, robes billowing, eyes wide with wonder and terror and joy. And I watched them disappear into the city, bearing the first fire of resurrection. Later, Peter came running, breathless, desperate. He stumbled once, cursed the rock, then wept when he saw the empty space. He fell to his knees, not from pain but from too much hope, from the weight of a second chance. I knew his name. I had felt his feet many times, but today he felt lighter, as if forgiven, as if love had called him back from the edge. Then John arrived, slower, steadier. He stood quietly, letting the silence speak. He didn't enter right away. He let the moment hold him. And in that waiting, he was healed. They left, changed, not because they saw a body, but because they didn't, because absence, when holy, speaks as loud as presence. The road was still, but not empty. The tomb was silent, but not abandoned. I, who once bore the weight of suffering, now bore the lightness of resurrection. And still, I waited. Not all would believe. Not all would understand. But I had no need to explain. I simply remembered, and I sang without sound. Then, that evening, He returned. Not to the tomb, not to the crowds, but to a garden, to a woman. She thought He was the gardener. She asked where they had taken Him. He said her name, just her name, and everything in her broke open into joy. "Rabboni," she cried, and fell to the ground. He told her not to cling to Him, not because He was distant, but because He had more to do, more to show, more to reveal. I felt her tears. This time, they were not bitter. They were salt and light. Grief turned golden. The wind changed that night. It carried whispers, rumors, hope wrapped in confusion. And though the city slept uneasily, I stayed awake. I held what others overlooked. I remembered what others doubted. He had risen. I knew it. I had felt it. And no silence, no denial, no fear could take that from me. I am a grain of sand. I did not see His face. I did not hear His voice. But I know the truth, because the tomb that once drank death had lost its power, because the road that once bore burden now held grace. Morning came again, brighter this time. The fig tree stretched, the birds returned, and Ismael, forgotten, unseen sang the resurrection. For He lives, He lives, He lives. And if they ask me if the feet that step upon this path wonder if it is real, I will speak in silence, in memory, in the warmth still held within me. I will say, I was there. I felt the tremor. I heard the angel. I carried the scent of folded linens. I held the tears of a woman who thought all was lost, and the breath of a Savior who proved otherwise. I am only dust, but dust remembers. Dust rejoices. Dust becomes the altar when the holy walks upon it. He is not here. He is risen, and I will never be the same. Some may step over me, never knowing. Some may curse the stones or brush me from their garments, but I hold a secret greater than any temple, greater than any law. I cradled resurrection. I touched the hem of dawn. I felt the moment when despair lost its grip, when fear forgot its name, when love, bruised and buried, stood up and walked again. So let them walk, let them question, Let them pass by. I will remain, and I will sing. For the grave could not hold him, and two will always remember. They gathered again, not at the tomb, but in rooms behind locked doors. The ones who followed, the ones who feared. Their voices were low, their questions looping like wind through dry leaves. Had it happened? Could it be true? They had seen him dead, they had buried him, and now, rumors, whispers, a gardener, a grave unsealed, footsteps on the road to Emmaus. Still, they doubted. Still, they hid. I lay outside, against the threshold of one such room. I could feel their hesitation vibrating through the floorboards. I listened for his name. It came often, in questions, in prayers, in tears. And then he appeared. No door opened, no footstep warned. Just presence, peace, light that did not burn but healed. They gasped. Some fell back. One wept aloud. Another covered his face, but he, gentle and whole, simply said, "Peace be with you." I felt the words in my grain, like a memory returned. He showed them his hands, his side, not to prove, but to invite, to say, "This is what love looks like. This is what resurrection feels like." He ate with them, not because he needed to, but because they did. Bread broken again, not in farewell, but in beginning. Joy grew slowly, like dawn does after a long night, and I, outside the wall, hummed with it. He was not just alive, he was among them, with purpose, with tenderness, with wounds that healed others. Days passed, appearances multiplied, roads remembered his steps again, shores remembered his voice, fish remembered his command, and hearts, once fractured by fear, began to stitch themselves together with faith. One morning, he met them by the lake. They had fished all night and caught nothing. He told them to cast once more. The net strained with abundance. Peter dove in. The others followed. On shore, a fire waited, and so did he. "Come and eat," he said, and they did. Eyes wide, mouths silent, hearts burning. After breakfast, he asked Peter, not with anger, but with healing, "Do you love me?" 3 times. Not to accuse, but to restore. Each yes, a balm. Each command, "Feed my sheep," a calling into wholeness. I heard it all from the reeds, from the water's edge. The fire crackled beside me, and I knew that failure was not final, that love restores. Then came the mountain. They climbed together, the wind strong, the sky clear. He stood before them not as he was before, but more, still human, still scarred, but radiant, rooted in glory. He gave them words, not commands, but commissioning. "Go," he said, "to all nations, to all hearts, to all corners of dust and doubt. Teach, baptize, remember, I am with you." And then he lifted, not floated, not vanished, but rose like a promise kept, like hope ascending. They watched, silent, stunned, joyful. I watched too, from the heel of one disciple's sandal. I felt the warmth where his shadow had been. I knew the world had changed. They walked down that mountain not as orphans, but as flames, not as doubters, but as bearers. The Spirit was coming. The story had only just begun. And I, small and steady, would remain on every path, waiting, witnessing, singing in silence. For he had walked here, he had risen here, he had loved here, and I will never forget it. Some days will come when they question again, when fear returns, when hope flickers, but I will always carry the weight of his footfall, the scent of resurrection, the echo of peace. I am a grain of sand. I have been near sorrow. I have touched glory. And now I am part of the story, part of the path, and always, always, I will be waiting to feel his steps again. And when the Spirit came, I felt it, rushing like wind, but deeper, flames above heads, tongues no longer tied by fear, words leaping like rivers from dry mouths. The city did not understand. Some mocked, some marveled, but I, underfoot in that upper room, I felt the fullness. I knew this too was him, not bound to a body, but living now in many, in fishermen turned preachers, in widows turned prophets, in slaves turned brothers. I felt the footsteps of thousands more, some gentle, some rushed, some pursued by fear, others pulled by grace. The road widened, the world awakened, and I, a forgotten speck on a forgotten street, bore every whisper of that awakening. They told the story, they broke bread in memory, they touched the sick, the shunned, the sinners. They risked everything for a kingdom not made of stone but of love. Some died, some fled, all believed. Years passed. Empires fell, cities crumbled, but the footsteps never ceased. Some carried crosses, some bore chains, some came dancing, some came limping, but they came, and I remembered. I carried, I rejoiced. For the King who once walked here never truly left. So if you find me, centuries later, ground down by time, washed by rains, tread by strangers, know this: I still burn, I still believe, for I once held the blood, the tears, the triumph. I once held the Word made flesh, and I will hold it still. I will hold it until He comes again, not in silence, but in trumpet sound, not in sandals, but in glory. And when He does, I will rise with the dust, with the saints, with the echoes of every yes ever spoken in the shadow of His cross, and we will not be forgotten, and two will be ready,